Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan, I'm the pastor here, and this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. Spiritual refugees are those of you who feel like you've been kicked around by religion, you've been kicked around by the church. You were told somewhere along the way that you don't belong, and here we say you do belong here at Free. So, welcome tonight. It is so good to be with you all. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. We are going to celebrate tonight. And I know it's a little, the world is dicey right now. Things can be a bit, I don't know, scary, heavy. And so it feels weird to celebrate. But tonight we are going to celebrate resurrection and new life. And as I just said in the comments on this live video, it is truly, it's so good to be with you all. There is nowhere else I'd rather be, except in person, of course, but nowhere else I'd rather be than celebrating with you all here tonight. So I'm so glad you're here. I know, again, this week, we have people joining us from all over the country because I get messages from y'all this week, and you're like, oh, that was so cool last week. We tuned in for the first time. If it's your first time here at Free, welcome. We're glad you're here. Drop us, if you're comfortable, drop us a line, introduce yourself, let us know where you're tuning in from. I know we have people from Texas and California and Missouri and Florida and New York and Connecticut. So Omaha, Nebraska. So again, y'all, welcome. Glad you're here. Happy Easter. I want to let you all know what to expect for the evening. My boy Derek is in the house. Well, he's not actually here right now, but we have him in the house virtually. And he's going to share an addiction letter, a letter to his addiction. And I can't wait for you all to hear it. Then we're going to celebrate together. Then I want to share with you a message of resurrection and new life. And then we have my boy Rob Decker here in the house with us. He is going to share his story, and y'all, the whole evening is going to be about new life. Stories from death to resurrection, death to new life. I can't wait for y'all to meet Rob. And then we're going to engage in some heartaches together because that's how we do things around here. We celebrate and we do heartaches. And then I want to talk for a moment about giving and then have a time of closing prayer. And so what I'd like to do right now is bring you all in to see Derek's, it's not a poem, it's a letter that he wrote to his addiction. And when I saw it the first time, I was like, dude, you gotta share that with the community. And so he came in one day this week. Danny filmed it, and I won't say any more. Here's a story of addiction. Welcome, Derek.
Dear addiction, you have taken my life with my permission to take the best parts of me and lock them away. You've altered my brain, ruined my relationships, made me choose to abandon my loved ones, lost all trust and faith with them. Then a point came when I couldn't even look myself in the mirror, that I couldn't even love myself. Then you unlocked the best parts of me and used them in horrible ways, to lie, to cheat, to manipulate. You took my light, my heart, and my mind and closed them off to where I became an egotistical, self-centered, and angry person. Because I chose to let you run my life, I lost my kids. I lost my dream of being a father. I lost college scholarships in sports, college degrees. I broke the law. I fought, went to prison, was assaulted in the assaulter. I was abused sexually and otherwise. I became the abuser. All because I wanted the pain and chaos. I wanted to be the victim, and I used all that hurt in my life, even others' pain, to get what I wanted. I walked on, ran over, destroyed anything to get sex, money, and most of all to feed you, my addiction. But I realized in my spiritual awakening, you were not my weakness. Now you are my strength. As I keep you at a safe distance, you are my greatest strength. Because all that pain I let you cause in my life has started to let me shine brighter. As my brain heals, your twisted thoughts of using to get happiness fail. As my mind starts to see that my kindness, humor, love, and care are my true strengths. As my soul escapes the prison you locked it in, you, my addiction, is awestruck and silenced in the beauty of my sobriety. My soul has been waiting for this moment, for me to let go of my addiction so my soul could be let back in. Again, my addiction is not my weakness. You are my greatest strength. Because you're a part of me, whether I like it or not. So I let you use me for negative consequences the rest of my life? Or do I use you for positive change and work against your will? You are my higher power, no more. My higher power allows me to harness you to continue to heal myself, and in doing so, healing others, which is the greatest thing my addiction has done for me. So radically, I give you up, but in doing so, will never let you be a negative force in my life again. You will, without any choice, guide me to being a better man, a kind man, caring man. You will allow me to see and use gifts I never even knew I had. I will be an amazing father because of you. I will be a good boyfriend or husband. I will achieve all my goals and dreams through my higher power because of you, my addiction. Most importantly, you brought me to a point where, yes, you will always be mine, but I will never be yours again. I'm Derek Didle, and this was a letter to my addiction.
Man, thank you so much for that, Derek. If you were moved by that, if that was powerful, show Derek some love in the comments below. Let him know you were moved by it. Let him know it was inspiring. Derek, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with this community. That's what we're about here, getting vulnerable with one another, sharing our experiences, and finding some hope in the deal. So thank you again, Derek. So glad you are part of this community. Now, what I'd like to do with y'all is celebrate, because that's how we kick things off here at Free. We do not ignore the hard stuff. We don't ignore the tragedies happening, the heavy things on our heart, but we don't start there, because we could get bogged down in that stuff if we started there. We don't ignore it, but we save it for the end. What we start with is celebrating, and how appropriate for this Easter, not Easter Sunday, but Easter Saturday night. So that's how we're going to start tonight, celebrating. So you're going to take 2 minutes, and again, there'll be a little timer on the screen. Take 2 minutes. Give us your comments in the comments section. What are we celebrating together? Because as I say every week, something really profound happens when we share the good things together, when you can say it and put voice to it, and then hundreds of other, literally thousands of other people will be joining you in celebrating. So here's your 2 minutes. Let us know. Maybe it's sobriety anniversaries, babies being born, new jobs happening, new things happening in life, transitions, whatever it is. We want to celebrate and clap and stand with you. So take 2 minutes and give us some celebrations in the comments below.
Secret is I just smile and say follow me. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Life's too short not to really live. I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the
All right, y'all, was that not fun, that video that Danny picked for us?
Dancing Yeti?
What do we call it, a Yeti?
Yeah.
A dancing Yeti. This camera, all right. Hey, we got Tammy with us this evening. She's going to help us
Hi,
with
guys.
some celebrations. So, man, we were, as y'all were celebrating, we were trying to read and keep up with the comments. So many. Thank you all for sharing your celebrations. We want to take just a couple of minutes and read through some of them. And if you're sitting in your living room right now, or your bathroom, well, that'd be awkward, wherever you are, go ahead and clap when you hear these celebrations. Let's celebrate together.
Oh, shoot.
All right, you want to go first,
Yeah.
Tam?
Hey, Jerry. So Jerry said, Ryan and Tammy having the courage to start free.
Man,
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
thank you, Jerry. Love you, brother. Jordan said, blessed to still be working and serving our elderly. How cool is that, Jordan?
Thanks, Jordan.
Congratulations. Thank you for sharing.
Got our friend Simon celebrating my entire free family. You guys are amazing. Celebrating the love and feeling being wrapped in your arms as I come out the other side of this virus. We're glad you're feeling better, friend.
Yeah, Simon. We know you've been through a tough road. Glad you're here. Judy Lawless says she is 4 days sober. Judy,
Awesome.
congratulations. Thanks for having the courage to share that. And we are celebrating with you. So cool.
Scott's here. He says celebrating new connections for sure.
Yes,
Thanks,
love it, Scott. Gina, my husband has 4 months sober. Congratulations,
That's big.
Gina's husband. That's big, really
Yeah,
big.
thanks
Thank
for
you for
sharing.
sharing that with us.
Hey, Drew, he said, I made it to 3 years.
Yes.
What did he say? No frontsies?
No fronts, because we
fronts.
celebrated that last week, but
Yep.
now he's officially celebrating it.
Very
Love
good.
you, brother.
Yeah,
Congrats, dude.
congrats.
Paul says, we celebrate you, Rev. You are a shining star.
Yes,
Dude,
he
you
is.
are the shining star. Paul, thank you for that.
That's very
I
nice.
miss your hugs, dude.
Amanda,
Glad you're here.
made it through the first week of virtual teaching. Amen. I know that was something big.
Woo.
God showed up and led me through it. That's awesome. Thanks, Amanda, for sharing.
Carrie says, I celebrated life and being with my family. Keep on doing that, Carrie. That's what it's about. Miss you and John and Tawny. Glad y'all are here.
Beautiful
We
family.
got one more. Do we have one more?
Courtney, thank you for sharing, Derek. It's been 1 year today since our son's first heart surgery. Praise God, he is healthy.
So
That's
cool. Way to go. Yes. Thanks for sharing that with us, Courtney. And Brian O'Brien, we talked on Facebook Messenger yesterday, or was it this morning? Anyway, 151 days clean and sober. Brian, keep on doing it, brother. It works if you work it.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. I'm glad we connected. Congrats. We're celebrating with you. All right. All right, one more. We got to take one from Jim.
All right, Jim, celebrating another day of community with folks in 12-step programs, working to be a little better person one day at a time, every day. Bless everyone who makes a decision to find a design for living that includes all.
Thank you, Jim. We
Thanks,
miss
Jim.
you and Lisa.
Yeah,
It's good to
we
see
do.
you all. I'm glad you're here
Chocolate
this
Lisa.
evening.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for celebrating with us. It's one of our favorite parts of being in this community together is we get to celebrate with you. And it's not just on Saturday nights. It goes throughout the week, and it is so cool to do that with you. So thank you for participating.
Thanks for letting me join.
All right.
See you in a
Thank you,
bit.
honey. We'll see you again in a minute. So let's talk about a little bit of resurrection and new life. Some of y'all know that last February 22nd to be exact, we welcomed a little baby boy into the world, and his name is Bricks. And he was number 4. And this came as a complete surprise to us, totally unexpected. In fact, we thought we were done with 3 kids. And when Tammy called me and told me that she was pregnant, my first thought was, how in the heck did this happen? I mean, I know how it happened, but how in the heck did this happen? Now, our youngest daughter, Shiloh, she was 6 at the time, she was so certain she knew how the world worked. Her birthday is February 18th. That's 4 days after Bricks. And to celebrate turning 6 years old, all she wanted from me was a French fries date. So that night, we set out to find the best French fries in town, and the conversation quickly turned towards the upcoming arrival of her new baby brother. So here we are, February 18th. We are shoving French fries down our throat, and she stops, and she gives me that look. Y'all know the look a 7-year-old can give you. And she crosses her arms and she says to me, Poppy, I don't want another brother. And when Bricks gets here, I am not going to like him. In fact, I will never like him. And so here I am shoving French fries in my face, and I'm trying to explain to her that, baby, you might feel differently when he gets here, when you actually get to hold him and see him and touch him. Because, see, I learned something about the mystery of new life a while back. And what I know is new life always has a way of opening us, surprising us, expanding us. So I want you all to fast forward 4 days. Here's a picture of Shiloh holding her new baby brother, Brixton River Canada. Now, I don't know, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but in the picture, she appears to be happy. Beaming, you might say, overflowing with love, overflowing with joy. I know you thought the world was this way, but new life comes along and says, really? Really? She was so certain she knew exactly how the world was. You see, Easter is about the new thing God is doing. Easter is about resurrection, and resurrection is about new life. Resurrection and new life always inject themselves into the story and say, really? Really? Oh, that's how you thought it was going down. Oh, that's how you thought the story ended. You see, one of the things I love about the Easter story is that it is so relatable. And some of y'all, I know you're saying to yourself right now, wait a minute, Pastor, come on, man. Come on, man, you had me up until this point. You're telling me we gather together one day a year to celebrate some guy that was dead and now rose from the dead, and you want to say that's relatable? Come on, Pastor, it sounds like a Walking Dead scene to me. Yeah, relatable. Because it's a story filled with the very human response to the new thing God is doing. And we need that story. And if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, yeah, but Pastor, you got to understand, I don't even really believe in that resurrection stuff. Yeah, sometimes I don't either. I buy into the same cynicism that you do. And I can tell myself, well, this is just the way it is and nothing's ever going to change. But see, I have to be reminded, it is not a story about resuscitation. It is a story about resurrection. And the two are very different. The first, in the words of my same 7-year-old daughter, Shiloh, is boring. It's about something old coming back to life, going back to the way things were. But the second is a story of the whole thing being made new. Fascinating, isn't it? Because see, the truth is, you don't really want resuscitation. I know sometimes it feels like you do. And maybe in this moment, during the craziness of what the world is experiencing right now, you're saying to yourself, man, I just want things to go back to normal. I just want them to go back to the way things were. But you don't want resuscitation. What we want is resurrection, a breakthrough. One that begins with death and darkness, but then bursts forth new life. So I want to share with you just a few of the verses from Luke's gospel story about the resurrection. It comes from Luke chapter 24. It's the first 6 verses, and we'll go ahead and throw it on a screen for you. But it goes like this. Very early in the morning, on the first day of the week, the women went to the tomb because the men were sleeping in. That's not in there, but y'all know it's true. Bringing the fragrant spices they had prepared. These are burial spices, spices used to prepare a dead body. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. They didn't know what to make of this. Suddenly, 2 men were standing beside them in gleaming, bright clothing. The women were frightened and bowed their faces toward the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He isn't here, but has been raised." Now, y'all, I get it. I mean, this is a story that it centers on he's dead, but now he's not dead. And now, I don't know about you, but when people die, they generally stay dead. It's why most of us, like me and millions of other people, are quite certain this is the way the world works. And when the women arrived at the tomb, the text tells us they didn't know what to make of this. Why? Because they knew how the world worked. So much so they even show up with their burial spices because they were preparing to prepare a dead body. They were certain this is the way things are going down. They had seen this story before. They knew what happened when you defied the empire, the Roman Empire, the largest, most powerful empire the world has ever seen. If you start proclaiming God's love for all people and you start getting rid of those boundaries and breaking down walls and the leaders lose control of what they're trying to control and you start standing against injustices, well, they knew how this story ended. It ends with you hanging on a Roman execution stake called a cross. That's how the story ended. And can you imagine when people were walking by that cross of Jesus' bloodied body hanging there? Can you imagine the disappointment? Look at him. He was the one talking about life and bringing us abundant life. Look at him. This is the one who said God was coming to rescue us. Look at him. What a loser. We thought he would come and conquer the empire, not die to it. Look at him. Look at him. And see, resurrection comes along and says, really? Really? You're looking for him here? He is risen. God was doing a new thing right here in the midst of the old thing, right here in the midst of death, right here in the midst of the burial spices, right here in the midst of not knowing what to make of this, right here in the midst of arms crossed, proclaiming to the world, this is just the way it is and nothing's ever going to change. You see, resurrection is God saying, I love the world and I'm going to rescue the world, and it is going to start with an empty tomb. So yeah, if you don't find resurrection a little hard to believe, then you might be missing the significance of death and new life. And for those of you in recovery, remember when you were stuck in the grips of addiction. Remember when you swore things could never be different. Well, you said this is just the way it is and it's never going to change. And you were dead and gone. Then somewhere along the way, God said the story isn't over. In fact, we're just getting started. And somewhere along the way, you encountered a God doing for you what you could not do for yourself. And now you know that sometimes death is actually the start to something new. Somewhere along the way, your life was restored. And it wasn't about resuscitation, going back to the way things were. It was about resurrection, being made new. And if you're stuck in the grips of addiction right now, I need you to know resurrection is possible. And I know you can't imagine it right now, but it's those moments where you say to yourself, new life? Here? You may not be able to grasp it. It may seem unimaginable, so impossible. And you might have all sorts of questions, and yet that's precisely the place where Easter happens. My brothers and sisters, do you see why early Jesus followers clung to this story? Do you see why this story has endured? Do you see why we still need this story today? The God who is always doing a new thing right here in the midst of the old thing. I mean, how many of you all found yourselves wondering in recent days, how long are things going to be like this? Is this just the way it is? Will things ever feel right again? Yeah, we need resurrection. How many of you all turned on the news at some point each day in the recent weeks only to see the rising number of COVID-19 cases, the rising number of deaths, and you thought to yourself, how many more people are going to die? And you see what's happening with the economy, and maybe you've been directly affected. And as you're watching the news, you swear that things can never be put back together again. Yeah, we need resurrection, don't we? How many of you all are keenly aware of the rising needs in this community as addiction rates are about to hit an all-time high? As we experience a crisis, and not just with COVID-19, but with our collective mental health. As people are now, as much as ever, asking their biggest God questions, expressing their deepest spiritual longings. Look for those moments today, tomorrow, in the days ahead, those resurrection moments where God is making all things new, and you get to be a part of it. Because see, the truth is, enough things can happen in your life, and it's like before long, before you know it, all of a sudden, you're walking around with your burial spices because you know exactly how the world works, and you've got your arms crossed like a little 7-year-old, and you're saying to yourself, well, this is just the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be, and nothing's ever going to change. Resurrection comes along and says, really? Really? Hang on. The story isn't over. Death and darkness and despair do not have the final word. He isn't here. He is risen. So I want to pause with you all for just a moment. Happy Easter. Happy resurrection. Happy new life. And if you're on, and like I said, if you're new with us, let us know you're here. Drop us a comment if you're comfortable with it. For those of you that have been here before, and new people too can as well, feel free to drop any questions you might have, any observations you're making along the way in your own journey with resurrection. Where do you struggle with this resurrection stuff? And see, and we don't do this journey alone. We do it together in community. So bring the community in on this. I want to encourage y'all. And I know it's kind of this new world we live in where everything's virtual, but we've got to stay connected, virtually and spiritually. So let others come into the conversation that you're having in your life, in your living room, in your great room, your dining room, wherever you are. And I want you all to meet my boy Rob Decker. I can't wait for you guys to hear this, some of his story. You know, I've gotten to know Rob a little bit over the recent months, and it's kind of cool because we almost share the same sobriety day. He got sober one day after me. My sobriety date is January 7th of 2013. His is January 8th of 2013. So we're kind of like twins. I was born first. He was right after. But this is a true story of death and new life. He was told, you know, after a suicide attempt that didn't work, he was told he wouldn't walk again. And how cool is it now? He's not only walking, but he's a fitness coach, he's a fitness trainer, and he's doing incredible things in the world. So I want to invite Rob Decker to come join me and for y'all to overhear some of his story. All right, Rob, welcome, man.
Thanks, man.
I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry we can't give each other a hug. We can't connect. But we can do air
We're good.
elbows,
Yeah.
air belly bumps,
We're
air
good.
fist bumps.
We're good. When things get better, we can get our hug on.
That's right. That's what
Yeah.
we're going to do.
Yeah.
So we're kind of twins. I should have
Kinda?
wore my free shirt.
You should have,
I should have wore my free hat.
because you told me you would.
I told you I would,
you
and I
would.
wore it yesterday. So I got a button up today for Easter.
Right.
My wife wanted me to wear a button up.
He just
here,
wanted to
how's
look.
that?
He wanted to look much better than I. So I get it. It's
Come
his
on
show.
now.
It's his gig.
Come
so.
on, man.
Yeah, right.
Dude, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Seriously.
So as I've gotten to know you, and we talked a little bit this week, and we were
Yeah.
talking about how we would do this thing, and I know I said we'd have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to your story. You had a traumatic childhood.
Right.
Leading up to 2007, your life was filled with drugs and alcohol and addiction and broken relationships, and you didn't have a real job. Things in your life weren't working. So I want people to hear a little bit about what life was like for you before we get to new life and what life is like now.
Before the major event.
Before the major event.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Northern California, and, I was born into a world with a mother who was told that she was never going to have kids, and then she was encouraged to have an abortion. And so when I was 6 years old, I found out that my dad wasn't my real dad, and my sister wasn't my full-blooded sister. And I believe that's where the division really started. And then growing up in my house with the division between my sister and I, there was a lot of drugs, alcohol, violence. And I grew up in a day and age where police would come to the house, arrest dad, and then 2 hours later he was free again. And mom and dad were fighting. And then eventually I got into high school and I started drinking at 15, and initially it was fun, right? I was just numbing myself out, but it was fun. And that led into drugs. And so my high school years were full. By the time I was 18, I was a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict.
Yeah.
I didn't look at myself that way. I just thought I was a teenager. In my 20s, I just couldn't hold a job. What would happen is that I would connect with all these people at work, and we'd party because that's what you do at work, I guess. And all my junk would come out, and they would witness that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then eventually, somehow, I would lose my job.
Yeah.
I was always pretty good at showing up, no matter what I smelt like. Right? I showed up. I got paid, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, but that was pretty much my life. My 20s, I was highly addicted, and
it wasn't just about having fun for you. It was, you said drinking and drugging to numb out.
Yeah.
To escape.
The revelation I had was that I was medicating myself.
Yeah.
There was a lot of childhood trauma that I didn't want to address. The story's so much deeper, but I had to stay numb to my whole situation. There's a lot of feelings that I didn't understand or I didn't know how to address, and so alcohol and drugs was a great way to deal with that stuff. I was highly insecure. I really didn't trust anybody, but I couldn't trust myself. I looked out for myself and just myself. I was in constant survival mode.
Yeah.
Along with the drugs and the alcohol.
And anyone who's battled addiction, you know exactly what he's talking about. And for those of you that have, because we have a lot of people in this community who are the loved ones of.
Yeah.
So for those of you that have watched this is not a unique story. This makes sense to you. You resonate with this. But Rob, I want people to hear what happened on Memorial Day weekend 2007. It was a life-changing experience. It was a real death experience. Mm-hmm. And sometimes death brings about new life.
Right.
Tell us what happened, bro.
So at that point, I was so far along in my junk that I wasn't working. I was sleeping on friends' couches. I was selling drugs, and I was involved with this young lady. Well, I was over at her place one afternoon, and she called the cops and told the cops that I raped her and tried to kill her. And in that moment, everything just changed for me. I was so broken. I was so lost. I felt so betrayed. I was just in this deep rabbit hole in this life, and I just didn't think it was worth living anymore. So I ran headfirst out of a 3-story loft window with all intentions of breaking my neck and killing myself. And I clipped the awning on the way down, and it changed my fall, and I broke my back, both my arms, and collapsed my lung, and I didn't black out from it.
Yeah, you were present for the whole thing.
I was.
You weren't even knocked out.
I wasn't.
So you go to the hospital, and I found this fascinating. You said a couple of days once you kind of came to in the hospital, you prayed to God, why did you let me live?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, what happened was the very next day, the cops came into the hospital and they arrested me for rape and attempted murder, and they threw $1 million bail on me. And, with all the chaos of the medication and the lights and the doctors, I had 24-hour surveillance. I had the police there, and I just remember the young lady showing up. And the cop, to him, it didn't make sense, and that's the last time I ever saw that young lady. But that night, I was asking God, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's going
What are we
on
doing?
here? And, you know, in that moment, I just had this great peaceful feeling, and I just heard these words that the charges will be dropped, bills will be paid, and you will walk again.
Yeah.
And I woke up from that slumber, and all the chaos was back. But a couple of days passed, man, and cops came in and dropped the charges.
And here's what's interesting, or at least I found this interesting when you were telling me some of your story, that the charges were dropped. Because sometimes I think things just happen. It's an overnight, eye-opening experience, and your life is automatically
Right.
different. Which for some of you that may be the case. Maybe you just had that one experience and your life was forever different. For many of us that wasn't the case. For you that wasn't the case. You said for, I believe it was 4 more years, you were still using,
I
still
was.
drinking alcoholically, and
Well, you know, and I was highly medicated too. So
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah.
on top of like shoving alcohol down my throat. Now I have like 5 or 6 different pills, something new to get addicted to. Because
Yep.
again, I wanted to be numb, right? And even though I had God in my life, I was still trying to numb a lot of the pain. And it still took a good 3.5, 4 years before I was able to shake the alcohol.
yeah.
You know, and I prayed about it all the time. I was still learning and growing in that process. It's just alcohol was that last vice that I couldn't shake, but it eventually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like what you said. You said that new life doesn't always happen at once, and you called it stages of resurrection, which I
Right.
love that term. I've never heard stages of resurrection,
Right.
but it makes a lot of sense to me. I think to a lot of people watching right now, and a lot of people watch the replay of this, by the way.
Right.
That stages of resurrection, that it happens over time. Tell us a little bit about that and what happened to you in 2012.
So in two so stages, so basically I had so much junk in my life and so much trauma that bits and pieces of it were getting taken care of at a time. And so once one thing got cleared up, then it was like, okay, now time to address this.
Yeah.
Well, I'd met a young woman at a job that I got. I'd gotten off a disability, so I was never supposed to walk again. They said I was never going to
Yeah.
walk again. You're going to be medicated for the rest of your life. Like, you're never lifting weights. You're never playing sports. None of that's happening for you. And I ended up getting a job at a gym as a personal trainer. And, you know, I wanted to be able to spend one-on-one time with people to kind of help them out with whatever they were going through. So more than just physical, it was, you know, spiritual and emotional and mental. So I met a young lady there at the gym, and for the next 9 months of our relationship, I was still hitting the bottle. And one night, I got behind the wheel of her car, and I ended up totaling that car and fleeing the scene of the crime, and hiding under a house and negotiating with God, and asking Him to bail me out of that situation. And under that house, I was just like, you know, thank you for everything you've done for me. You really dug me out of this hole. But if you can just throw me one more bone, if you can do it one more time,
Foxhole prayer.
right, I will move from where we are now to Southern California to move close to Alyssa's family. I will marry that young woman, and I will never pick up the bottle again.
And your last drink was January 8th
Yes.
of 2013.
And that was it, man.
So
That
tell
was
us, give us the 2-3 minute version of what life is like for you now. And I love how, Rob, when he was telling me this story, you talked about forgiveness. So what is
Yeah.
life like for you now, and how does forgiveness play a part of it?
Well, I think we were talking about the stages of resurrection, right? And
Yeah.
I knew that in order for healing to take place, I had to forgive. And I remember when I got out of the hospital, you know, forgiving my mom and dad, looking at them as two human beings that had been through a lot of stuff themselves, and forgiving them for the things that we took on. And that gave me great healing. You know, they're people too, and they've been through stuff, and I don't blame them for anything. We all go through stuff. And so the forgiveness really created a lot of healing in my heart. And now, like, I have a gym, my own business. I have 2 beautiful babies. I have a relationship with my oldest son. I have a beautiful wife. Like, I speak and share and train, and right, like,
Life is
freaking good.
It's
Yeah.
not perfect. You still
No,
have,
no,
you know, the
no.
hardships and the things we deal with in life.
Absolutely.
But you can deal with them differently today.
absolutely.
And Rob, tell us, I found this really powerful when you were You told me your dad died in 2018 of a
Yeah.
meth overdose.
Correct.
And tell us how you were able to love him through that and what that looked like.
Well, you know, just forgiving my dad and understanding that he had his own demons, and there was nothing I can do to change that. All I could do was love him. And I remember my dad calling me high as a kite one day, and he asked me, "Why do you even love me, son? Everything I've ever done to you, like, how could you even love me?" And I was like, "You know, Dad, I just do."
Yeah.
Because I had true forgiveness in my heart, you know, and
And don't you think that forgiveness, it happens when it's like the St. Francis prayer says, when it's better to understand than to be understood.
yeah,
And you were willing to kind of step in his shoes and say, I understand you've got your own demons.
right.
And I'm going to love you through that. This is what forgiveness looks like.
Right. Well, I understood my trauma and where it came from, and I understood that my dad had his own growing up too,
Yeah,
and so, you know, he deserved the same type of love that God gave me, and so I just wanted to give it back to him, and I just, you know, and with my mom, you know, she's been 3 years sober, so, you know, she found the Lord.
Congratulations, Mom.
Yeah, congratulates, Mom. But yeah, you know. That forgiveness, I can't stress forgiveness enough. I really can't, you know. But it
And I
helped
know it's
me.
real to you, man. When you talk about it, I can tell
Yeah.
it's a very real thing to you.
Well, you know, it still hurts that I lost my dad.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I know he's in good hands now. You know, to see your dad fall victim to his devices and to never really get the fullness of life, that's what breaks my heart, you know, because now I have the fullness of life. I have the Lord. I have a family. I get to love. I get to share. I get to go out and give what God's given me to other people.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad misses out on all that. He's never met my kids,
Yeah.
you know, and so, yeah, it hurts. But, you know, but I love them. And
Yeah. You know, one of the things Rob ended with when we were talking this week was he said recovery isn't just about not using or not drinking. Recovery is about serving others. And if you all get to know Rob, and I encourage you to connect with him on Facebook, you're going to see that the dude is like a machine. He does push-ups with kids on his back and weights on his back. But one of the things his life is about is serving others. And I thought it was so cool. You told me that your gym, you're keeping it open to the public right now.
I am.
But how he's doing it is he's got like an appointment thing.
Right.
And it's one person at a time. And then they've got to clean up. You supply the supplies, but they
Right.
clean up. And he's doing donation based. So leave a donation, even if it's not money, leave canned food goods. And then they serve those to the homeless. And I thought, that's what it's about, man, serving others. And you live that. You actually model it.
Well, you know, we were talking about the whole recovery, and it's one thing to get rid of the drugs and the alcohol from your life. But when you've conquered that, when you've like just beat it and life is good and it's like going full force, you know, take everything that you learned.
Yeah.
And the things that changed about you and give that to other people. I think it's just taking it to the next level, man. And
to keep the gift, you have to give it away.
you absolutely. It's not for us to hold on.
That's
you know,
right.
you don't just.
It's not a gift if we hold it.
No. And so I just want to give it to others.
Dude, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, man.
If Rob's going to hang out, he's going to head on to the back. And if you've got questions for Rob or show him some love, y'all show him some love. He came up here from the Springs tonight. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
But he will engage your questions and all night, not just right now, but he'll be hanging around tonight and he'll be jumping on and off. So feel free to have a conversation with Rob throughout the evening. And again, bro, thanks for being here.
Thank you, bro.
We're going to have him back. We're doing a habit series. Whenever we get back together in person, we're going to go back to the habit series that we were really excited about. But he's one of our guest storytellers during the habit series. So he'll be back soon. Whenever we get back together in this joint, we'll get it going. So
for sure.
All right, dude.
Please
Thanks for being here.
ask me anything.
He's an open
I got
book.
you.
Open
Absolutely.
book.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank you,
dude.
Ryan.
Good to have you here. All right, y'all. How we end things around here is heartaches. It's one of the most beautiful parts about being a community together is just as we celebrate together, we also lift up our heartaches together, the burdens that we're carrying, the ways we can pray for one another. We have a prayer team here at Free. Jason leads that prayer team, Jason McKissick. So grateful for you, brother, and the work you do in keeping our community connected, reaching out to people. We pray for y'all through the week. So if you make a comment during this Heartaches time, you get added to the prayer list. We lift y'all up in prayer. And it's not just me or the prayer team or Jason. This whole community does. I see you all do it week in and week out. And you all are proving that church isn't a building, that it's a community of people. And I see that happen throughout the week. It's so cool to see. So during the next 2 minutes, I invite you to share with us the burdens you're carrying so we know how to encourage one another, how to lift one another up, how to pray for one another. And you might get a text this week or a Facebook message or a phone call. And it's our way of being community together. And God always hears our prayers. So take 2 minutes, just like we did with celebrations. Then we'll come back and read a few of those. Have fun. All right, everyone, welcome back. Glad you're staying with us. So many comments coming through, and we are lifting you all up in prayer. Just to give to shout out a few of them, and y'all, let's lift these up together. Michael Campbell says, my son's friend Cody died from the virus the other day. If we could lift the Leister family up in prayer, it would be greatly appreciated. Love you all. Man, love you too, Michael. We're lifting.
Sorry,
I know
Michael.
so many people have lost loved ones this week. And yeah, we're lifting the Leister family up in prayer and so many other families. Thank you for sharing that with us, Michael.
Stacy says, please pray for me and family. You got it.
Absolutely. Drew says prayers for my friends who work in restaurants. Yeah.
We know a few of those too.
Absolutely. We're going to hold all of them in prayer. Thank you for lifting that up, Drew.
Lex, please, Lord, continue to prepare Grant for a life in recovery. We'll pray with you too, Lex. Thanks
Prayers for
sharing.
Grant. Gina says, I work in a nursing home and we have lost several residents to the virus. So sorry, Gina, and thank you for your service. We'll lift you in prayer and all those who have lost people, loved ones, friends, family members to COVID-19.
Yeah, and we sure appreciate you, Gina. Thank
Yeah.
you for what you do.
Absolutely.
MJ, please pray for family going through the virus with a new baby. Oh.
Yeah. Prayers for your family, MJ. Pam says, please pray for that Sam finds the wagon as he continues to be homeless in Los Angeles. Yeah. Prayers for Sam, and we're going to talk about the wagon in just a moment.
Judy, please pray for me during my second round of becoming sober. I'm a mess. I have a 14-year-old son who needs me. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Judy, and we will be praying with you and for you.
Yeah, your son needs you. Absolutely. Jerry Davis, pray for my wife, Mary Ellen, and my kids. Mary Ellen's oldest brother passed away following 2+ years battle with cancer. Michael McCarthy was a great man and a loving brother. He is missed and his family is hurting. Yes, Jerry, we saw that earlier this week on Facebook. Prayers for Mary Ellen, her family, prayers for the entire family. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sorry, Mary Ellen. Yeah, we've been
Absolutely.
praying for you. Landon says, praying for anyone who has experienced recent loss, and also praying for the Cunningham family and their daughter Zoe, who has been courageously battling cancer. Thanks for sharing, Landon. We'll be praying.
Yes, thank you, Landon. Jim says, request prayers for Andrew W., who has shared his story of his life sentence. Yeah, Andrew's been a frequent guest here. Love you, brother. He is going through extremely tough battle just now. He shared he now understands what? Not sure what the rest was, but I think I get the gist. Prayers for you, Andrew. Thank you, Jim, for lifting that up.
We love you, Andrew. Thank you, Jim. And we
Yes.
will continue praying.
You know, here at Free, our central image is a wagon. And I'm glad Pam, I think it was Pam who lifted that up, that Sam would understand the wagon, find the wagon. And the reason the wagon, there's a picture of the wagon, the reason the wagon is a central image here in our community is because it's who we are. And you know, it was a few years ago when I was taking a tour at the rescue mission, the LA rescue mission, in Los Angeles, and we were up on the 3rd floor, and the executive director was showing us around, and they had pictures of their memorabilia, their history, and one of the central images on the wall was a wagon. And I said, dude, what's the story with the wagon? And he said, oh my goodness, you don't know the story of the wagon. And I said, oh my goodness, I don't. You should tell me. And he said, that's how we got started. This is the largest rescue mission in the country now. That's how we got started. This wagon would go into the roughest parts of LA back in the late 1800s, and they would distribute things like food and clothing and Bibles and hope. And then at the end of the evening, they would welcome anyone who wanted to get on the wagon to get on the wagon and head to a place of safety and recovery. Now, what happens when you get a bunch of drunk people on a wagon? Yeah, some of them fall off, which was mind-blowing for me to hear. I was like, dude, is that where the phrase falling off the wagon comes from? He's like, yeah, that's where that comes from. But this wagon, when people would fall off, this wagon would stop, and the sober ones would get on the ground with them, pick them up, and put them back on because they knew where they were headed, a place of recovery and connection. And when I heard that story and I saw that image, I thought, that is who the church is supposed to be. That is community at its best. That is what we want to do here at Free. We are the wagon. We do not kick the wounded. You are welcome in this community, but your shame is not welcome in this community. And it doesn't matter if you're on day 1, day 4, or year 20 of your sobriety. You are welcome here. All of you is welcome here. Your whole self. That's who we want to be, the wagon. Lift one another up because we know where we're headed, a place of recovery, spiritual connection, healing. That's where we're headed together as a community. And on the wagon, we have a donation box. In fact, scattered throughout Free, we have different donation boxes, but it truly is your generous giving that helps sustain this ministry, especially during these difficult days that we're experiencing together. And so I just want to let you all know, if you call this home, if Free has had an impact on your life, an impact on your family member's life or your friend's life, we encourage you to give here, and we don't take that lightly. I just want to let you all know we are grateful, and we've seen like a tremendous amount of generosity from you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just want to remind you, there's a couple of ways to give if you want to give this to this community. 2 simple, secure, and safe ways. And the first one is you can text the number that's on the screen, and it's really simple. You just text give, and then it'll text you back how much you want to give, and you can put any number in there, and then it'll hook you up with a link. It's a safe and secure way. Our second way is visit the website, freespiritualcommunity.com, and click on donate. And again, you can enter any number in there. There's no number too small. We are so grateful for any amount of giving. It truly does. It is your generous giving that helps sustain this community that we call Free. So good to be with you all tonight. Happy Easter. I hope you celebrate the heck out of it tonight, tomorrow. Look for those resurrection moments everywhere. And I would love to close with you in prayer. It'll be on the screen if you don't know the Lord's Prayer. If you know the Lord's Prayer, feel free to bow your head and just enter into this time of a ritual of prayer. Invite God in, and the prayer goes like this. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Love y'all. So glad to celebrate with you tonight. Happy Easter, everyone.